Ms. Atwood, we are speaking on the occasion of this year's Budapest Forum, co-organized by the Budapest Mayor's Office, the CEU Democracy Institute, and Political Capital. It claims to be a, quote, pro-democratic, anti-populist platform in Central Eastern Europe. What are the greatest challenges faced by contemporary democracies, in your opinion?
In my opinion, well, I'm not alone, in my opinion. Democracy is having some attacks on it. And this kind of thing usually happens when there's been a system that has worked quite well for the people who like to be in charge, and then it stops working quite so well for them, and they lose faith in that system and want to put in something else that will keep them in control. So early democracies, let us say the United States, suffrage was pretty limited in the original 13 colonies. You had to have property, and you had to be a man. And in more southern parts of what is now the United States, you had to be white.
Yep.
So as populations change and transition, some of those people who were formerly excluded, let's just start with women, get the vote. And then they vote for things that they would like. Trouble. So yes, I think that's happened. And the other thing that can happen is that the financial structure becomes top heavy.
Yep.
So too many people at the top have too much of the money, and the pyramid, as it goes down, the people at the bottom, and even the second from the bottom and the third from the bottom and the fourth from the bottom are either stagnant or they have less spending power than they had, say, 40 years ago. So the erosion of the middle class makes a lot of people angry because they expected to be in it and then they aren't. And then somebody comes along who says, only I can fix it. You've heard that before.
Yes.
And they say, oh, good, somebody's going to fix it. So they vote for an autocrat who really is working just for the rich people.
Yeah, but so taking into consideration the influences of capitalism on democracy, to your mind, is populism inherently in contradiction with democracy?
I'm not even sure what populism means.
Yes.
It contains the word popular, and we all like that. So we hear populism and we say, what's wrong with it? And it's related to the word population, and aren't we supposed to be in favor of the citizens and all of this kind of thing? But I think we need a different word to describe what is happening, because it is not... Okay, so what political scientists mean by it is an underclass rising up and being easily deceived and voting for things that they're told are going to benefit them, but they don't. I think that's kind of what they mean by that. But it's if it's not even clear to me, a lot of people are probably quite confused by it, which I am. So what we mean is, let us say, prelude to the French Revolution. Yeah, wasn't fun, that event. A lot of people didn't have a good time in it. But then you have popular uprisings. For instance, I'm old enough to remember the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, at which point I was 16. It made a big impression on me.
Really?
I even wrote, yes, I wrote quite a bad poem about it. I find when I'm looking at my early poems.
Did you ever publish that poem?
Of course not. It's not very good. I don't entirely understand it, but
maybe you should write a new one.
Maybe I should write a new one, but it was very. It made a big impact, and I know a lot of people who got out of Hungary at that time because they went into the arts in Canada. A lot of them became filmmakers. Some of them were poets. Yeah. One of my good friends went into publishing. She escaped at that time as a teenager with her mother. Although her kids keep saying, "You're getting younger and younger, Mom, at the time when you left." When you first began to tell us that you were like 15 and now you were 2. But she's never told anybody how old she is. Women's ages, well, everybody's ages have a way of moving around.
Thank you very much for mentioning the heritage of the 56th revolution. It really moves me.
Yes, well, a lot of people came here and, of course, became very suspicious of anything that looked like a totalitarian takeover.
So most Hungarian viewers will know you as the author of The Handmaid's Tale and the vocal advocate for women's rights. Do you think that women on a global scale have become more powerful since 1985 when the novel was first published? Or is it the case that the old patriarchal structures are still in place, albeit in different forms?
Okay, things have certainly changed. Since, I'm not going to say 1984, I'm going to say since 1955.
Okay.
That gives you a much longer time frame. So the progression of events was 1955 was still basically the 40s. And 1965 was basically still the 50s. So that kind of thing was still in place, I would say, until 1966. What happened then? 2 things. The birth control pill became available to people who weren't married and on their own recognizance. That is, they didn't have to get parental approval.
Okay.
So the birth control pill, although it made some people have strokes, gave you double vision. They hadn't perfected it, let's put it that way. It became widely available. The 60s at that point turned into the 60s, not the 50s anymore. And the second thing that happened, and you will think this is funny, so stockings for women used to come in pairs. They didn't have this joined thing that we call pantyhose or collant or tights or whatever you may call them. Those didn't exist. And in the middle of the 60s, they became available. And what did that enable? It enabled the mini skirt.
Okay.
So you think about it, don't think about it. You had the pill and the mini skirt, which gave you together the late 60s and the so-called sexual revolution. And that then coincided almost immediately with second wave women's movement becoming public and widely known about. It hit the media, in other words.
Okay.
So the 70s was a decade in which there were a lot of law changes. A lot of changes happened to the law. You could get a credit card without your husband's permission, just for instance. Ownership of property changed. Yeah, a lot more independent things like that. And then in 1980, Ronald Reagan gets elected, and there is a pushback. And that pushback has continued really until now. So that's when the religious right became organized as a political force in the United States. And that is when I started writing The Handmaid's Tale. Because if you had any knowledge of American history and politics over the years, you could see where this was going.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about The Handmaid's Tale, because it is one of the most frequently banned books in the world. Congratulations on that. Although in Hungary we have not reached such a point. However, a couple of weeks ago, a bookstore was fined for distributing so-called pro-LGBT propaganda. Since then, bookstores have begun to wrap up pro-LGBT works so that young people cannot read them in store before purchasing.
Okay, this is back to the old days of, it's the old days of pornography. That's what they used to do to pornography.
Yeah, something like that. But do you think that book banning and the like is merely a culture war tactic, or is it about something more?
It's about controlling who can say what. Okay. And let us say that this can happen on both sides of the political spectrum, just depending on who is in power at the time. So there was a lot of censorship under the former Soviet Union, as we know. And we know that people were smuggling out their samizdat works, and they would get published in the West, or you would go to a place like Poland and people would say, do you want to read some samizdat? You know, we've got some under the counter. But so things were circulating, but not publicly, because authoritarian regimes want to control who is saying what. So who is allowed to say what, who is permitted to say what can be said. In the Victorian age, it was about sex. So that's why the artists, were, strike a blow for freedom, publish Lady Chatterley's Lover, like that, or say Tropic of Cancer, or, something with sex in it. It's not that Victorian literature didn't have sex in it, but it was all happening in the shrubbery.
Yep.
Like if you were a teenager, you could get quite confused by that, which I was. What just happened? I don't know. Something happened, like that. So the big push was to get sex on the page. So they did that with kind of mixed results. All of these things have mixed results. And swearing. What kind of swearing you can have? Big fights over that. And now we just have wall-to-wall swearing. It's getting very boring, quite frankly. People used to be more inventive about their swearing. And by the way, I'm told that Hungarian has the biggest vocabulary of swear words in the world.
Yeah, that's
by
our
those
fame.
who know. Is that true?
I cannot confirm that, but yeah, there's sure.
But you think so? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I try to get my friends to translate some of these things for me, and they really sound quite complex.
Yes.
A lot of them involve horses and the plague, I'm told. Is that true?
Yeah, I can confirm that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, they're not lying to me anyway. So then it has switched, and you can do all this swearing and sex, but there are a lot of other things that apparently have become forbidden. And once you start forbidding, it just becomes a question of who can forbid what. So it's not a question of nobody forbids anything. Somebody's always forbidding something. And then it becomes a question of how much state power is involved.
Wow.
Because once state power is involved, there's a political agenda, not just a politeness agenda. Polite people don't say that. It goes way beyond that and into the area where you can destroy your political opponents by accusing them of having said the wrong thing.
Okay.
And a lot of that was going on during the Stalin purges. If you look at the films of the show trials, a lot of people didn't even know what they were supposed to have done.
Yep.
They knew they were guilty, but they didn't know what for. What were they supposed to be confessing to? And during the Cultural Revolution in China, you could get denounced just for a few words, of the wrong thing. You said the wrong thing. And once you start with that, of course, it's open season. So what is the answer? That everybody should be allowed to say everything? That's never been true.
Yeah.
And if not, who is allowed to say what? So the First Amendment in the United States was originally, you shouldn't be jailed or executed by your own government for saying something that they found politically offensive, unless it was treason or sedition.
Wow.
Okay? And that's now been extended to First Amendment rights. You ought to be able to say anything you like, but there's always been limits to that. It's called libel law. No, that varies from country to country.
Wow.
So this is going to be a battleground for a while. But what you really don't want is a government in which the judiciary and the executive branch are the same.
Wow.
or the judiciary is just a wing of the executive branch, because that's when you get a lot of very perverted justice.
I would really like to expand on this topic, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. So let's jump on artificial intelligence, because that's a key issue of the day. So,
artificial intelligence.
Yeah. and the news broke recently that pirated copies of your works
I know.
have been used by companies to train their AI software.
I know.
It sounds fascinating.
I know.
But how did you feel when you first heard about this?
Well, I thought they were very cheap. You know, why didn't they just buy the book if they were going to train their...
But would you allow these software companies to use your work in order to train their softwares?
I don't think I would have any control over that if they would purchase it legitimately. So we use legitimately acquired texts to train human beings. That's called education.
Yep. But
so the argument could be made that they are educating these intelligent machines, essentially. I'm waiting to see the legal cases over that. And right now, you can't copyright anything produced by such, what would we call it, by such a program, because it's not a person. It's not a human being. So you can produce this stuff, but you cannot copyright it so far.
But do you think there is any way to protect writers and societies at large from the risks associated with these new technologies?
Well, we don't even know what the risks are yet because they're so new.
Yeah.
And if it were science fiction writers going to town on it, you would get something like 2001, in which hell, the computer decides to kill all the human beings because he just doesn't feel they're necessary. So these are the kinds of things that haunt people's nightmares. Haunting their dreams are, think of the medical breakthroughs we can do, think of the amazing calculations that can be made. But artistic verbal artifacts so far seem to be beyond these machines. We tried some examples. They're terrible writers. They can't even do punctuation properly. And one of the reasons, of course, is that they've been trained on a huge amount of verbal output, some of which is quite faulty, and some of which is factually incorrect. So you can't even depend on them to tell the truth.
Okay.
You're still going to need human fact checkers, researchers, and copy editors, because these things can't write very well.
And I know our time's up, so here is my very last question. Thank you very much for your patience. If you had the chance to sit down with Viktor Orban, the right-wing Trump supporter, Hungarian Prime Minister, what issues would you raise to him? Which causes would you bring to his attention?
I would bring to his attention people's definition of Christianity. And there's a new book coming out on that by Jim Willis. I'm going to be tweeting about it probably today, Jim Willis. And he was associated for years with a movement called Sojourners in the United States, which is a Christian organization. And he is standing up for the fact that a lot of these people who say that they're talking, renewal of Christianity, are not Christian. They aren't paying any attention whatsoever to the supposed core belief of Christianity, including the key statements of Christ himself. And that would include loving your neighbor and doing unto others as you would wish them to do unto you. Just essential golden rule things like that. Lord's Prayer stuff, they're not paying any attention to that. So it's Christianity without Christ, which isn't Christianity. And we could go on for some time about that, but I'd be willing to take him on that one. Okay. If you're not loving your neighbor, whoever that neighbor may be, you are not following the teachings of Christ himself. And I propose to him the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's a good place to start.
Absolutely. Sharp and strong words. Thank you very much, Margaret Atwood, for your time, and thank you very much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you. I hope I didn't get you into too much trouble.
Absolutely not. No, I loved this conversation with you. Thank you very much for the chance.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.